Happy Monday, Flower Mound United Methodist Church family. It's good to be with you today. I'm joining you from my garden, from my backyard, and hopefully as you hear the sound of the wind and the wind chimes, you can be reminded of God's Ruach, the breath of God that gives us life each and every day. And so it is that I'm joining you because I wanted to talk a little bit about this rose bush that is behind me. It has a story about it, which is a story of God's abundance in the midst of scarcity. And that is our theme for this week. We come to the book of Exodus, chapter 16 this morning, and it is a story about the second month of the people of Israel wandering in the wilderness. And we might feel a bit like we are wandering in the wilderness. It is their second month, and we are going into our second month of this sheltering in place in the bit of the unknown of what is before us. And the Israelites start complaining. They start talking about how they wish they could just go back to Egypt, even though it was a time where they felt enslaved, that they wish they could go back because at least there would be provisions for them. And so it is that in verse 11 of chapter 16 of the book of Exodus, the Lord speaks to Moses and says, "I've heard the complaints of the Israelites. Tell them, at twilight you will eat meat, in the morning you will have your fill of bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God." And so it is that we know the rest of the story, that God provides the quail at night and the manna, bread of heaven that they have every morning. And it's just enough for their needs. So I don't know about you, but I am feeling the need to have just enough for my needs lately. As we are sheltering in place, this is starting to get a little bit old. And we're having a challenge in our family to find something new, something different to do each and every day to find God's abundance in the midst of scarcity. And that's where this rose bush comes in. You see, this rose bush did not start out looking like this. In fact, it started out about this big. But I was absolutely determined that we were going to have a beautiful rose bush in the backyard of our house. And so I replanted this rose bush 3 different times over the course of 8 years. Replanting and replanting and replanting it, watching to see how it would grow, to make sure it had just the right amount of sunlight to allow it to bloom and to flourish. And as I think about God's abundance in the midst of scarcity, one of the things I'm reminded of is that it does take some effort for us to recognize it. That God's growth is happening, but there is some intentionality behind our actions to be able to recognize it. And so what I'm going to ask you this week is to be intentional, to look out for the places of God's abundance in the midst of these times that feel so scarce, to be aware, to be active, to even be thinking of how you might plant or replant so that that abundance can be visible to you. For we know it is there. We know that God is active. We know that in these scarce times that God is faithful. And so let us keep our eyes, our ears, and our hearts and our minds open to witness to it. Amen.